right now. I mean, I like to think that our audience has a stronger biblical worldview, but the statistics don't necessarily bear that out. And it's just simply a matter of us not being in God's Word, learning the right position on these principles. And then, as George was talking about today, how to engage people on that. How do you talk to people about these things in a way that's going to give you influence, enough influence to hopefully win them over on the right side of the argument. That's what we're always trying to do here on the program, always trying to educate ourselves and you, the audience, on the particular issues of the day and also where the culture's headed. So really important to follow, I think, what George's work and what he's continually putting out there, because it equips us. It gives us that intellectual ammunition that we need to go into these culture battles. And I apologize to those of you that don't like the the war terminology, right? When I say we're at war, we're in the culture war, intellectual ammunition into the battle, those kind of terms. For some people, that's too strong. And I would just say, listen, the Bible's full of that type of terminology, both in terms of actual war, and then when it comes to, the warring with our flesh and the spiritual battles that are out there as well. So I do think it's appropriate to use those terms. And when I say I apologize if that terminology is, doesn't fit for you, what I really mean is I apologize for not doing it better. Let's put it that way. All right, folks, listen, we're going to take a break and come back for our final segment together today. I hope you'll stay with us, and I hope you'll share this with your friends and family. Be a force multiplier. Don't keep all this good news to yourself. Stay with us. We'll be right back. You're listening to At the Core with Walker Wildman and Rich Reed.
Forget about Facebook. Last year they've been banned twice, and he's unbanning the word.
They put us under the ban. Christians and conservatives don't need your YouTube.
Banned one day, banned again.
AFR programs are now live streaming on the AFA streaming app. Now you can get shows like today's issues straight from the source.
Put back on the next.
Just say unbanned.
Unbanned.
Just search AFA streaming or visit streaming.afa.net to sign up. American Family Studios was started back in 2011 as a way to advance the Christian worldview into an increasingly media-rich culture.
Media is like such a powerful tool to communicate the gospel. I love writing stories, getting in my office, and just thinking, how can we portray this concept of who God's character is? And to get to use the gifts that God has given me is really a joy.
AmericanFamilyStudios.net.
Sometimes you see a win, a glimpse of God in this broken world. Preborn rejoices in the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Preborn's mission is to love and help women in unplanned pregnancies by offering them the truth, to help them make the right choice by providing free ultrasounds. You see, when an expectant mom hears her baby's heartbeat and sees the image of her baby on ultrasound, she's seeing a life created in God's image, and it's a divine connection.
And I got to hear and see my baby for the first time. Hearing the heartbeat made me cry, and it was certain that I was going to keep my baby forever.
To learn more about Preborn's life-saving work, go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com, or dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. All gifts are tax deductible. Your love can save a life.
Your healthcare is just that. It's your healthcare. It's yours. You are unique. God made you. So instead of being a number in a system, think about being a part of a community, one made for you. MediShare is healthcare sharing. It's not health insurance. It's a community of Christians who actually care about you and the things that matter most to you, like your convictions. You want to know your money isn't paying for things you don't believe in. Instead, now you're sharing. You're helping real people, not a corporate bottom line. And when you have a need, they're there for you. Other MediShare members and staff even praying for you. For 30 years, MediShare has meant affordable, reliable healthcare. And when everything else seems to be getting more corporate, more impersonal, this is a breath of fresh air. And it may be just what you have been looking for. Call now. They're very easy to talk to. 833-44-BIBLE. That's 833-44-BIBLE. 833-44-BIBLE. At the Core podcasts are available at AFR.net. Now, back to At the Core
on American Family Radio.
We're back here on At the Core with Walker Wildman and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach, and your host on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Final segment of the day, another special guest coming up. We've already been talking about, basically a biblical worldview on honest weights and measures, on land and taxes and all those things. We talked to George Barna about some of the lay of the land out there, where people are, and how to bridge that gap, and how to win people over, and how to spread the gospel better. I mean, that's really what he was talking about. So good stuff. And now we've got my good buddy Senator Bryan Hughes coming up. Now listen, this is a guy that I've known quite literally for more than half of my life, and maybe even more than half. Anyway, he was an old college Republican buddy of mine. I used to be involved on college campuses across the state of Texas, and getting young people involved. And this was back when I was like 19 years old. And Brian was at another college and also involved. And I just got to tell you this before I bring him on. So the first time we met at a meeting, he walks into this meeting, and it's this crazy raucous, there's a political fight going on, and I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole, but it was crazy. And he walks in, and he's got the baby's feet pin on his lapel. And most of you probably know what I'm talking about. It's where there's little silver baby's feet, and it basically means I'm pro-life and I'm fighting for the unborn. And he walks in, and he's got that on his lapel, and I looked at him, I looked at that, and I pointed to it, and I said, "You and I are going to be very good friends." And that's exactly what happened. We've been locking shields together ever since then. Convinced him to run for the legislature back when I was in the legislature, and I actually lost that year, and he won. So we basically swapped out. And he was in the House for years, and now over in the Senate in the great state of Texas, has been a phenomenal leader. He is the guy that passed the bill in Texas, the heartbeat bill that had that very novel idea that ended up really just breaking new ground and just phenomenal, and made it where you had a civil penalty, and just it's led on so many issues in so many ways. So Senator Hughes, God bless you, brother. Thank you so much for coming on the program today.
Rick, I'm thankful for you, and as you know, I've known you forever and been listening for a long time. I'm honored to be on with you.
Well, man, I know you're in the middle of Texas legislative session, so you got a million issues flying past you right now, but one of the ones that got some attention nationally was the exchange that you had with some of the folks from BlackRock and others, and it all has to do with this whole ESG thing. So if you could just tell us real quick before we get into what happened at the hearing, what is ESG, and why are you as a senator, and why is the legislature interested in this?
Yeah, Rick, it is really something. It's really hard to conceive of. It's like so many things where they take terms that used to have a meaning we all understood, but they redefine those terms. And so under the guise of ESG, which is for environmental, social, and governance, what you have is these Wall Street firms like BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard. I bet countless people listening to this broadcast have their 401ks with BlackRock. Maybe you're in a state retiree system, or you have money that you watch in a university endowment fund. State Street, Vanguard, BlackRock invest trillions of dollars. They hold trillions of dollars, and it's other people's money. So, Rick, you give them some money to invest for you, and then they buy stock with that money. And under federal law, they own the stock. What does that mean? That means they buy shares in Exxon, Walmart, every other company you can think of. And when the annual meeting of those companies come around, here's BlackRock, and they've got millions of shares in Exxon, for example. And they go to Exxon and they say, "Hey, if you want us to vote our shares in favor of you to keep your job, Mr. CEO, if you want us to vote these shares to keep the board members you want, then we need you to do the following things." It's kind of like in Chicago in the 1920s when the Al Capone's guy comes in and he says, "Hey, you got a nice store here. I'd hate for it to burn down. I can help you with that. He's going to pay me for protection." Forgive me, but it's like that. So they're making these companies take left-wing positions at the risk of voting the board out, firing the management. And this has all been happening quietly over the last few years. Stuff that the left could never get accomplished in Congress or in a state legislature. They're doing it in corporate boardrooms. And Rick, they're using our money to do it. It's horrible what's been happening, but we're on to it. We're pushing back.
Well, that's you read my mind on the next question. How to push back, right? With these big, massive corporations, who are they willing to listen listen to, and how do we put pressure on them? Because I guess as a consumer, I can try to figure out where that money's going with my mutual funds and 401ks and everything you're talking about, and try to direct my funds better to companies that aren't going to do this. I think we should encourage people to do that, absolutely. And then what are you working on, and what led to this hearing where you were able to actually question these major corporations?
We did, Rick. This started 2 years ago. Texas passed Senate Bill 13, and it was aimed at these big banks like Bank of America and other banks that had said publicly, we are no longer going to loan money for oil and gas projects. And so Rick, that if there's no money for a project, the project doesn't get done. If there's no oil and gas, that means the price of energy goes up. That means the price of everything we buy goes up. It harms the poor mostly, but it hurts everyone. And so we passed this bill that said to these banks, if you boycott oil and gas, Texas boycotts you. No pension work for you, no bond work for you, no university endowment fund work for you. And it's having an effect. Other states are starting to push back. And so now, you mentioned the hearing, Texas Senate committees have subpoena power. We don't use it very often, but we have subpoena power. And because BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard invest so much money on behalf of the state of Texas, we're a pretty big customer. And so,
and that's when you say on behalf of the state of Texas, that's all the different funds like the Permanent School Fund or other areas where a lot of teacher retirement funds, those kind of things, are state funds.
Rick, you're exactly right. The Employee Retirement System of Texas, Teacher Retirement System of Texas, that money belongs to those retirees, and a lot of that has been managed by BlackRock. And so we told BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, we want to see documents to show what you've been doing, because they've been going around crowing about how they're using all these shares they own to push public policy. I bet many of our listeners know who Larry Fink is. He's been, for the last few years, just bragging about what they're doing. He says they want to do what's called a fundamental reshaping of finance. He calls it stakeholder capitalism. Rick, it used to be if someone managed money for you, their job was to maximize returns, make you money. But now these firms say, oh no, it's our job to push public policy. And so what we're telling them is, hey, you take care of managing the money, let us take care of the politics. The people can make their own choices on politics. So we sent subpoenas.
Because it's kind of like an undermining of some people are going to say this is exaggeration, it's an undermining of the Republicans, an undermining of how a constitutional republic works. It's taking away you as my senator, my representative in government, making those public policy decisions as we would expect, and giving that to these unknown, not elected, backroom deal corporation folks.
Rick, that's exactly what's happening. And as you say, it's happening quietly. No one even sees it. That's part of what we sent them a subpoena for. They said they've been forcing these companies to take action. We want to know what company, what actions, what did you threaten them with, what did you do? And so we've got thousands of documents. We did have to send a subpoena to BlackRock. We also had BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard appear in order to testify at this hearing. One of the things they've done, Rick, they've joined a group, for example, called Net Zero Asset Managers. And when you join this group, you pledge to use all the assets you have under management to push for the Paris Climate Accords, for net zero by 2050. Now, Rick, you and I want clean air and clean water. All of your listeners do. It'll be a great day when technology gets there and we don't need fossil fuels, but we've got a ways to go. We're not there today.
Yeah.
So cutting off fossil fuels by that time would raise the cost of living, raise the cost of goods, put people in darkness. And so BlackRock will say, oh, but wait, we have this fund for ESG. If folks want to invest in ESG, they can. We have this other fund for other things. But Rick, when they join this group, they pledge to use all assets under management, yours, mine, the state of Texas, everyone's. And so that's what we wanted to talk to them about, because they have a fiduciary duty to maximize shareholder returns, but on the other side of their mouth, they're saying, we're going to push everything toward this political goal. So that's what we had the hearing about, and that's what we made them come answer questions about.
Well, how did they do? Did they answer questions or did they dance?
They danced. Rick, the BlackRock witness came, a very nice lady, very sharp, and so we put statements in front of our documents we got from BlackRock, even their website. And their website says, we joined Climate Action 100 to push for net zero by 2050. 50. That's what we got that from their own documents, and couldn't get much of an answer out of it, to tell you the truth. But we put a lot of documents up. A lot of people watched the hearing just to shine a light on what is happening. There was some good news. I mentioned BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. After we set this hearing and ordered those three firms to appear, Vanguard, a very large investment firm, they withdrew their membership in Net Zero Asset Managers.
No kidding.
And it's encouraging, Rick, and their CEO made a statement. Our job is to maximize shareholder returns, and that's what we're going to focus on. So there's some encouragement. Other red states are doing similar to what Texas is doing. And Rick, there's enough of us. If the red states push back and use our pension funds, our retirement funds, our endowment funds, as you say, we're talking about billions and billions of dollars. If we all push back, we can teach them some manners and teach them to not play politics with our people's money.
I love it. Teach them some manners and teach them to not play politics with our money. Fantastic. Well, Senator Hughes, you're well known for the life issue and so many other things that you've worked so hard and been on the front lines of. I appreciate the fact that you've got the breadth to also go after these economic issues, and there's just you got a lot of stuff going on, man, and I appreciate you taking time to come and inform our listeners and us about it as well. And I know you got a couple of really busy months coming up with the final part of the session. Keep up the great work. Our listeners are going to be praying for you. We're going to be praying for you, and look forward to getting you back and getting some good news on some of the bills that pass this session.
Rick, I'm following your lead. I thank the Lord for you. We're so blessed to know you to be your friend, and our country and our state are blessed by what you're doing. We thank the Lord for you.
Well, right back at you, man. That's Senator Brian Hughes. What a blessing. You know, if you ever sit around and think there's nobody left, there's nobody in public office that stands for biblical values or does the right thing or has enough backbone to take on the people that are trying to destroy our country. There you go, right there. I mean, you've heard from three great leaders today here on the program, and there's one in the state Senate in Texas that has been getting incredible results. I mean, for as broad as the life issue, which was his number one reason for running for office in the first place, and he's been just an absolute champ on the life issue for years here in Texas, and even leading nationally on it, to taxes and regulatory issues and all of the other things that he's continued to work for and stand for. So be encouraged, folks. Be encouraged. That's the kind of leadership that we can have more of. If we'll teach biblical worldview, if we'll train our kids in biblical worldview, if we'll train the next generation of leaders in biblical worldview and get them to apply it, then we get leaders like Brian Hughes in Texas. We need more of that all across the country. I hope that you'll help us raise up those kind of leaders. That's what Patriot Academy is all about. It's what American Family Radio is all about. That's what we do, is teach people how to apply the Bible to every area of their life. And I've mentioned it on the program, but Patriot Academy is building a campus in Fredericksburg, Texas. We've already broken ground. We've already got buildings going up and ranges going in and all the cool stuff we do. We do our handgun defense class. We do Constitution training. We're building Independence Hall, do the Constitution training there with young people. We're going to have a 1-year, essentially gap year program for young people 18, 19, 20 years old to come in and spend a year with us and get grounded in biblical worldview, get grounded in constitutional governance. We taught leadership skills, life skills, tons of opportunities to be mentored and just have that epiphany moment where God really speaks to them and gives them purpose in life. All of that's going to happen on that campus. We're also going to have essentially Disneyland for patriots. That's probably the worst way to describe it, but I mean it's a way for you to come in and spend a week with us, bring your family, do the handgun class, do the Constitution training, be a legislator for a couple of days and get to really experience all the things that the Constitution gives you the right and the duty to do. In other words, learn how to be a good citizen. Learn how to be Caesar and do Caesar well. Jesus told us, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and unto God what is God's. And we've got to learn how to do Caesar well. We've got to learn how to be a good leader and be a good citizen. And every single one of us has a role to play in this thing. Every single one of us. And so we're building this campus to have a place where people can come to from all over the country, meet other wonderful citizens from across the nation, have great fellowship and camaraderie and all of that, but also go home and take that constitutional knowledge and that biblical worldview and apply it in their community. We're breaking ground, our official groundbreaking. We've already been on the land for a few months, and it's amazing how much has already been built, and the beautiful ranges that are going in, and the buildings that are going up, and all that. But we're going to have our official ceremonial groundbreaking on April 22nd. April 22nd in Fredericksburg, Texas. I'm telling you about it because I want you to be there. I would love to meet a ton of people from our audience right here at American Family Radio. So please consider coming and joining us. The cool thing is you come for the groundbreaking on April 22nd, and you stay over and you can be a part of the very first constitutional defense course at the Patriot Academy campus. We've taught that class to thousands and thousands of people all over the country, but you can be a part of that first class right there on the Patriot Academy campus. So check all of that out today at patriotacademy.com. That's patriotacademy.com. It's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for you to get to come and meet other wonderful citizens from across the nation, but get some really good training while you're there, and then take it back to your community so that you can be the catalyst for a restoration of biblical values and constitutional principles right there in your neighborhood, your community, your state, and in our nation. Thanks so much for listening today. You've been listening to At the Core with Walker Wildman and Rick Reed.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family.
90.5 KTXG Greenville, Dallas.
Chatting, laughing,
Blogging, hashing it out.
expression.
Let's talk. The Stand, a blog for religious freedom, to promote Christian values and to expose attacks on the American family. The Stand is a wall of defense and a beacon of light to those in danger. Lift your voice. Visit afa.net/the stand. That's afa.net/the stand.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
Family News, almost a year. The Treasury Secretary reassuring the public that the nation's banking system is stable in testimony before Congress.
The collapse of Silicon Valley and Signature Banks has many worried of a nationwide financial crisis. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen tells the Senate Finance Committee the administration is working to make sure there isn't a domino effect.
Americans can feel confident that their deposits will be there when they need them.
Yellen says the Treasury worked with the Federal Reserve and FDIC to protect those with accounts at the now defunct banks using the Deposit Insurance Fund, which Yellen says is paid for by fees on banks and not taxpayers. In Washington, Ryan Schmelz, Fox News.
Republicans are pushing back after the president's new executive order on gun control. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham says the issue shouldn't be about personal politics, but the rights of Americans.
The Biden administration's executive order expanding background checks evades the American legal system to get a political outcome. Liberals will do anything and everything to get their way.
Louisiana Senator John Kennedy says the plan infringes on Americans' Second Amendment rights.
The Supreme Court has spoken very clearly in Haller and Bruen on the Second Amendment. We have an individual right to own a gun. Doesn't mean that Congress and the presidency and the states can't impose reasonable regulations, but they can't take away that right.
On Tuesday, a Russian fighter jet struck the propeller of a U.S. surveillance drone while it was flying over the Black Sea. Florida Congressman Mike Waltz says the U.S. cannot sit idly by during Russia's aggression.
Now we have unmanned aircraft in international waters, and the Russians want to force them out too, and the response can't be do nothing.
Texas is trying to make things right with students and parents in one of the largest school districts in the nation. Charlie Butts explains.
The Texas Education Agency is taking advantage of a law passed 2 years ago which allows it to take over failing schools and/or school districts that are failing. It has begun the process of taking over the Houston Independent School District. Jonathan Sines of Texas Values tells AFN about the legislation that was passed.
The effort was led by Representative Harold Dutton, who is an African-American Democrat, and it is actually his school district and the high school that he went to that's come into question. And so just to get a little bit more credibility of the history of this. And so now this is all coming to fruition. The state's been left with no choice but to really help close to 200,000 kids in that school district.
Over the next few years, the state will establish a new board and hire a new superintendent before turning back to Houston voters eventually.
But for now, they've got to get this thing turned around and build some confidence for the families in that area. And look, I think what I understand is the second largest school district in the country. And so, there's a lot
He says there will be political accusations, but it's not a political issue. I'm Charlie Banks.
In California, a Bay Area school board is taking some of the biggest names in social media to court. CJ Papa has more.
The lawsuit claims TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube, and others create a destructive environment for children, leaving parents and educators to deal with the growing crisis in childhood mental health. The claims from the San Mateo County Board of Education and its superintendent saying the crisis is made worse by artificial intelligence and machine learning. In a statement, San Mateo County Superintendent Nancy McGee says it creates distracted students, increased absences, and cyberbullying, among other issues. The companies are not commenting, but Google has said previously it has invested heavily in protections for children. CJ Papa, Fox News.
And finally, the average long-term U.S. mortgage inched back down this week after 5 straight weeks of increases. Good news for home buyers as the housing market's all-important spring buying season gets underway. Mortgage buyer Freddie Mac reports today that the average on the benchmark 30-year rate slid back to 6.60%. More news online at AFN.net and the AFN Mobile app. I'm Rusty Keith.
What does the American Family Association stand for? We believe true morality flows from biblical principles and directs people to the manner in which God intends them to live. These values and more are part of our mission to inform, equip, and activate individuals to strengthen the moral foundations of our culture. We also support the church. We want to be a leading organization in biblical worldview training for cultural transformation. Thank you for standing with us as we seek to stop the erosion of godly values.
You know, as Christians, we have to understand and be real with where we are. That's what we have to see first, individually. And where our mindset is and what we desire.
Airing the Addisons.
I think what God is really calling us back to, it's those individual personal revivals in our own lives where we're like, oh Lord, what have we done? We have minimized you.
Promoting truth, wisdom, and empowerment.
As the church, man, we should be on the forefront of disciples, of indoctrination, and other things.
If we don't train our kids, they will not be able to stand.
Airing Addisons.
On American Family Radio, thank you so much for listening. I'm Miki.
And I'm Will.
The Youngblood and Jay Mack are on tap to help us navigate the show, so we really do appreciate them. When we get to the last segment, we will get your response to some of the topics that we are discussing today. In fact, there's one major topic, but we're going to fold 3 stories into making this point. Today we're talking about all of the admissions, just all across the landscape, and specifically as it pertains to those of us who will be truth tellers in culture on the pro-life front.
Yes.
Telling the truth about who these children are, that they have worth and value,
Right.
that the current way that they are viewed in culture is as if they are some type of property or, kind of reminiscent of chattel slavery. When we say that, we are accused of kind of, what do you call that? Sensationalizing what's actually happening, that people don't actually think that. Well, we're going to talk about all the admissions that confirm that what we've been saying is true, and I always say this to believers and those who would kind of happen in on the conversation that believers are having. We don't need the world to confirm truth for us.
Amen.
Okay, like it's nice when they arrive, like it's nice when they show up and they get there and they're like, oh, wait a minute, but we have the Word of God, the eternal Word of God, that is the truth of God, and so if we stick to the script, then we will do well. But here we have all of these admissions that are kind of popping up in our culture recently, and we want to talk about those. I will say this before Will the Great makes an announcement or reminds you of how you can be a part of our spring share-a-thon. Let me just say this. Probably because of the content we're going to talk about, the pro-life front, it may be a little bit disturbing for some of our younger listeners. I'll just say that, and parents can be the gatekeepers of that. You can decide if you want your younger person to hear it. I will say this. It is a conversation that increasingly is being had with all ages of young people, beginning the indoctrination process very early on. So anyway, but I still want to give parents the opportunity to decide when they want to introduce those kinds of topics and themes to their kids. So, disclaimer there, we may reissue it on the other side of the break. But Will the Great, how can our listeners help support us during our spring share-a-thon?
Yeah, we're gathering stories now to play during share-a-thon, listener stories. And so if you have a testimony of what God has done for you through American Family Radio, we would love to hear that. Just call 877-876-8893, 877-876-8893, and leave those testimonies right on their voicemail, and they'll take it, produce it, and you may hear your testimony during the share-a-thon. And so that's 877-876-8893. Also, remember, if you want to email us, you can email us at Addison's. It's for the show, Addison's@afr.net. And buy your tickets now if you have